Now, I've talked a lot about this, but we've gone back into the archives with the Jakari Jackson report from last year, actually a year and a half ago, and Bill and Melinda Gates' statements and their own patents and their own research, as well as the Rockefeller Foundation, and are going to be putting together a very clear picture, confirming what Dr. Francis Boyle said here last Friday. In fact, we should probably just get the intro of his interview last Friday where he talks about Zika for about 5 minutes, where he discusses top biological weapons experts that he's in consultation with. And, of course, he wrote the U.S. and UN Biological Weapons Treaty that was ratified back in the 90s. So that gives you an idea of the level of his gravitas. And he said, unquestionably, it is a bioweapon, and it's being race-specifically delivered. That means it's not race-specific, and then it only attacks certain races of humans, certain variants of humans, certain, I think, breeds of humans is better. We're all one race. Different varieties of humans, as race-specific does. But what it does is it basically is being deployed into areas in Latin America, but now spreading all the way into Texas, and is being sexually transmitted and causes horrific birth defects. But there's a whole host of other pathogens in the vaccines and other areas that also cause the same birth defects and the same syndromes. And I kept asking myself, until about 6 years ago, they always said in the news and in the medical inserts with vaccines and everywhere, if you're pregnant, do not take a vaccine. Because it was known to cause autoimmune disorders in children. It was known to cause miscarriages from 3 months to 8 months. It was known to cause all sorts of serious rejection problems, you name it. And for the same type of disorders that Zika has been documented to cause. And so you look at the numbers that investigative journalist John Rappaport's gone over, we have a lot more of these developments of deformities, the children's heads being much smaller here in the United States and Europe, the microencephaly, than you see actually in places like Brazil and other areas where Zika is spreading to hundreds of thousands. So is this a cover that they're saying the mosquito is causing it, but really it's what's being now introduced to the environment? It's like, take Brazil again. You can look up these articles. Brazil had one of the lowest rates of breast cancer in the world until they adopted glyphosates, Roundup, and other weed killers in the same family in the last 20 years or so. And now their numbers are skyrocketing. Europe had low breast cancer levels till they brought in glyphosates, which we know grow the exact type of tumors that are most common in women's breast. It grows them. In fact, it is hormone-dependent cancers, is the whole family of them. So it's a weed killer, but it's a cancer grower in mammal tissue. That's why you see such an explosion in prostate cancer in men. I mean, this is well-established, well-known, well-developed research and facts. So we're dealing with all of this, and we're trying to suss out exactly what's going on. Because a lot of times, like with HIV, it'll be the cover for what's really killing people, a whole other different group of viruses. And I was told that back in the 1980s by my father, who pulled out medical literature and showed it to me. And then I asked him, I said, Dad, I ought to make him get in here and do an interview sometime. I asked him, how do you know that? And he said, well, I've been told that by high-level people in the Dallas medical community. And then I could extrapolate many years later when my dad told me, oh, well, yeah, you know, at Baylor, where he was a professor of dental sciences, that he would be one of the guys that treated the high-level CIA people and folks, because they would come in with guys in the room when they would sedate them to, you know, do root canals and the rest of it. That's how paranoid the government was back at that time. And my dad still won't tell me about a lot of it because, you know, he wasn't really involved in a bunch of classified stuff, but he was involved and around those whole groups of people. And he told me so much of the stuff he warned me about came directly from those type of folks. Like, son, you're 15 to get your hardship license. Do not fill out the organ donor card when they ask you if you want to give your organs. And I said, why, Dad? And he said, I've been told by hospital heads that there are certain doctors and certain groups within the hospitals and certain hospitals that lean towards this, where they don't give you the same treatment if you're in a car wreck or whatever, even though you're viable, because they can get hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that was back then, you know, 27 years ago when I was getting my hardship license. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for your organs. And I actually thought he was full of it, but I didn't completely think that, but I was somewhat naive. I didn't completely believe it. And so years later, I'm watching 60 Minutes in college with my grandfather and grandmother, because they like to watch that every Sunday. And sure enough, they admitted the hospitals in Dallas, the hospitals in Chicago, and places like that, exactly what my father had told me, point blank. But I'm digressing, because we don't need to, you know, go back to anecdotal stories from 27 years ago. Dr. Group's coming in to break this down today. I knew the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation bought out the Rockefeller Foundation for all their weaponized cancer and weaponized sterilant research that's been declassified. I knew that they were heavily involved in developing these genetically engineered mosquitoes to, quote, deliver vaccines and, quote, other forced treatments on the public because they love us so much. I knew that going back to the 20s, the Rockefeller Foundation had already patented weaponized cancer that could be injected. That's mainline history, folks. Just search engine Rockefeller Foundation, cancer viruses, weaponized cancer. But then when you actually read deeper, this is what Group brought in this morning and pointed out. And sure enough, I'd even noticed an article on CNN that we just showed saying, look where Zika came from. First, they were claiming that it came from somewhere in South America. Now they go, oh, Zika's birthplace is Uganda, just like Ebola and everything else, where they have these big globalist and UN research labs where they've been caught testing on people forever. And, of course, you've got Bill Gates releasing mosquitoes inside crowds of people and making jokes and saying, we've got to save the earth and bring one of these numbers down to zero. And the one number, of course, that he brings to zero is humanity. And the TED TV crowd laughs. We're going to bring all those clips back up today and play them in the third hour. It's going to be very, very important. But guess what Dr. Group found from atc.org, and this database of the federal government and private organizations as well. Zika virus, ATCC VR84, the depositor and patenter and owner of it is the Rockefeller Foundation, 1947. Yeah. How do you think this virus gets over from Africa magically, and then it gets souped up like Dr. Boyle, the biologist, the political scientist, the Harvard lawyer, it's quite a pedigree, the author of the Biological Weapons Treaty that was ratified, saying everything points towards it being weaponized Zika. Absolutely, because Zika wasn't wreaking havoc in Africa. Now Zika just magically is showing up and causing all these massive birth defects, so they tell you, you better not have kids until 2018. Now we're going to spray billions of dollars of chemicals all over your jungles and forests. Now we're going to have all these testing labs and screening processes to make sure you don't have Zika. If you get bitten by Zika and you're a woman and you're pregnant, you have a chance of having a problem. If you're a man, you just get a light fever. But the point is, you know it's coming, and sure enough, I search engined it last night. They're rush developing a Zika vaccine. Oh, yeah, I'm sure there'll be some side effects that, let me just guess, are going to affect fertility like they always do, but that's okay. We get scared of Zika. We better go out and do that, and we already have our new Texas cases of Zika popping up. But here it is, Zika virus, ATCC, registered VR-84 trademark. And the trademark, of course, is held, and the patent is by Rockefeller Foundation. Source, blood from experimental forest sentinel rhesus monkeys, Uganda, 1947. References Dick GW, Trans-R, Sock, Trop, Med, Hygiene 46-509, 1952. And now, right on time, Bill Gates has got his mosquitoes. He starts turning them loose. And he, of course, is heavily tied into the Rockefeller Foundation, and all the fun starts. Stay with us. All right, before we get into the Zika virus and the fact that it's ATTCC registered VR-84, owned by the Rockefeller Foundation and now deployed, before we get into all that, remember I had the author of the U.S. and UN ratified Biological Weapons Treaty, the global treaty, on last Friday, Dr. Francis Boyle, saying he's talked to his high-level genetic engineer associates, and they concur they've taken Zika and souped it up. Because it now, and he said this before it was in the news, it is being transferred by sex and saliva. But he's saying it could also be a cover for other things in the vaccines that are causing the same type of mutations in utero. So we're not sure exactly what's happening, but boy, it is suspicious, like Hillary winning 6 coin tosses in a row in all the disputed areas of Iowa. We also have Joe Biggs' piece coming up later where he did the joke piece on Hillary with that in downtown Austin yesterday. But before we do that, here's a report from a year and a half ago that Jakari Jackson did, getting into Bill and Melinda Gates and their production of genetically modified mosquitoes.
Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here just so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
That was Bill Gates laughing about how he plans to use mosquitoes to force Medicaid against malaria. With horrible side effects accompanying voluntary vaccinations, I, for one, want to be in control of the needle, whether it comes from a pharmacist or a mosquito's face. In a world where taking too much cough syrup can send you to the hospital, can't taking too many vaccinations do the same thing? That's exactly what Nazi scientists were hoping for during World War II. They wanted to use mosquitoes as bioweapons to poison their opposition, a dream that was fulfilled when they switched out the mosquitoes for ticks on Plum Island. Years ago, the U.S. government brought Nazi minds to the States under Operation Paperclip to carry out various scientific functions. On Plum Island, Eric Traub experimented with ticks as bioweapons. In the 1970s, Lyme, Connecticut had an outbreak of what is now known as Lyme disease. There have been other strange occurrences that many speculate are related to the work done on Plum Island. So go ahead, opt out of vaccinating your child. Bill Gates and Eric Traub have the medicine. You can find more reports at Infowars.com.
And we're back live. I want to go to another clip of Bill Gates where he's talking about equations at a TED Talk and showing what numbers have to be brought down to zero. And he points at humans being brought down to zero, and the crowd laughs. And again, I won't go over the background because we want to go into the specifics here, but Bill and Melinda Gates and their whole foundation and Microsoft itself is a giant IBM front of Planned Parenthood. His father ran Planned Parenthood, and it's the whole shadow government. His father was in Army intelligence after World War II and basically was in charge of bringing a lot of the science over to IBM, and IBM had financed Hitler from the beginning. Just search Thomas Watson, founder of IBM, with Hitler. You'll see the photos, the films. He won the highest award in Germany, one that Hitler didn't even get. So he was considered the most important man in Germany and would actually travel there during the first year or so of World War II. Just like the King of England had to abdicate because he got caught being a Nazi. In pop culture, they tell you it was because he married an American woman. Pure bull, though she was a big Nazi. We're not saying it's a Nazi conspiracy. We're saying that the technology, the ideas that kind of came from here went to Germany and then came back home to where they came from. So let's go to Bill Gates talking about population control.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
You lower population.
But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
Oh.
Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here just so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
Only poor people.
And again, I didn't give much direction this morning. There's another clip where he talks about bringing the number down to zero specifically, and they laugh that we'll find that and get that. I saw Rob do in the studio. We'll see if he sends over the specific longer one I want to get. But it's important to focus on this Gates stuff. We'll create a super clip of it in the near future. But this is his known background. This is what he stands for. He gave a Bill Moyers interview 20 years ago that we found clips of online where he breaks down his whole plan. So here's a mad scientist involved in weather weapons, a guy involved in controlling our schools, our education. He's the biggest funder of gun control in the U.S. Then it's Bloomberg. He's the guy running the elections in Iowa and many other areas. He's involved in everything. And now here he is. Let's get into Zika, Dr. Group, and what you think's going on. New weapon to fight Zika, the mosquito. When it comes to killing humans, no other animal even comes close, Bill Gates, whose foundation fights disease globally, has written. So hiding in plain view, and then we have Zika virus, ATCCR VR84, owned by the Rockefeller Foundation, blood from experimental Pharis sentinel rhesus monkeys, Uganda, 1947. And now it pops up in Latin America. And tell us what it supposedly does, Dr. Group. You've got the floor.
Well, there's no doubt that this is bioengineered. And the scary thing is when you start messing around, we know how bad GMO crops are, but GMO animals, we know about transhumanism, we know about all the experimentation with genetic codes being spliced into animals. Now we're talking about genetically modified mosquitoes and created bioweapons. I mean, I guess they can say they found it in 1947 in Uganda in the rhesus monkey. And then the Rockefeller Foundation back then involved in different types of biowarfare and vaccine production and viral studies in South America, went ahead and patented that virus. Why is it that all of a sudden it's showing up now? And the scary thing about genetically modified mosquitoes is mosquitoes are a vector. It's just like a needle. It's just like a vaccine. So all of the people that out there saying, well, I don't want to be vaccinated anymore. Well, guess what? You're going to have genetically modified mosquitoes running around and flying around everywhere.
And he admits that's his plan. In fact, he's the one pioneering vaccines in fruit and vegetables where it grows pharmacologically in the fruit. You don't have a choice. He's all about making you take it. And I guess they're making us take Zika. They're making us take Zika. What they're trying to, if you trace back the Zika virus to the Rockefeller Foundation, and then you look at Oxitec, which, by the way, mysteriously was just bought out by Intrexon, and if you trace back the board of directors and everything like that for Intrexon is majorly owned by Fidelity Investments. I mean, you can look at, you can easily just keep going back and tracing this whole trail. The question is why? Why all of a sudden? I mean, every 2 years we have something, usually exactly in 2 years. I said last time with Ebola that was a test. You agreed that was a big test to see how the public was going to react with the fear, everything else. We knew that there wasn't really going to be a vaccine, even though we heard they were working on one. I think with the Zika virus, it's, well, number one, Intrexon's stock has gone up, the genetically modified mosquito production company. And oh, isn't that just cute? And now all of a sudden they said today that there's an Indian corporation that has 2 vaccines. So with this, you're obviously going to look at getting people sick, reducing the population. You're going to look at vaccine production, of course, and you're also going to test and see what this does to the environment and how it affects all phases of different animals as well. Right now, I just saw just a few minutes ago, actually, that this company in India has developed 2 vaccinations. Or I mean, anytime stuff like this comes out, this has already been in the works for years and years. And so he said, I bet there's going to be a vaccine. It's already being made. And how convenient. Company, I can't remember the name of the company in India. We'll just Google it. Indian company. I saw it yesterday. Indian company develops Zika vaccine. You can pull it up, guys. Yeah, funded, by the way, by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Of course. Yeah. So the best thing you can do, in my opinion. World's first Zika virus vaccine made in India, claims scientists. Bill and Melinda Gates funding it. Thank God they love us. So the big story here is pay attention to this and be aware that if this can happen, also you have to look at
what's going on in Brazil? Why are all these mosquitoes being released in Brazil? Well, you have the Olympics in Brazil, Summer Olympics in 2016. You're going to have representatives and people, contestants, athletes, fans from every country in the world in one central location. And that's where they're releasing this virus. So it's a perfect vector to spread this disease all over. Now they say it can be.
But even better, then everybody's got to have the vaccine when you, quote, get your shots to go to Brazil. And then who knows what will be in the Bill and Melinda Gates developed Zika vaccine.
Exactly. The vaccine. And now they're telling people not to have babies till 2018. And the pesticide levels that what I hear are going to be sprayed not only in South America, Brazil, but all over the world.
The USDA just approved a new super Roundup herbicide. I've got that article right here, actually.
So you're going to have billions and billions of tons of extra pesticides being sprayed upon us, and you're going to have more hospital visits, which is good for the pharmaceutical.
Well, let me ask you this question, Dr. Group. Why isn't anybody other than the top bioweapons expert in the U.S. and us and a few others pointing out this is suspicious, that Bill and Melinda Gates, they're connected to Zika. They say they want to reduce our population. The White House Science Czar wants to do it. You've got the Rockefeller Foundation owns it. They're developing a vaccine. They're the usual suspects. I mean, why are they so obvious about what they do? I think it's where Bill Gates opens up the mosquitoes in the crowded room and says, it's okay, it'll reduce our population, and points at the board with an equation to bring us down to zero. I mean, he's just there doing it. He goes, there's no reason only the poor people should have to go through this. And he's actually telling you metaphysically what he's doing to you in front of you. For some reason in lore, that's what bad guys have to do. They have to tell you first what they're going to do.
Well, see, the genetically modified mosquitoes are males, and what they're designed to do is mate with the females in nature. So what you're doing is you're taking a genetically modified mosquito made by man, and you're introducing it into nature, which is a natural mosquito. So automatically, you're going to have alterations in genetic codes for the offspring. So what it's designed to do is stop the female mosquito from replicating that Zika virus, and it's supposed to kill the larva. The problem with that is, and the reason, if you look into the research, why all those mosquitoes were released in Brazil.
You can actually soup them up. It's actually, they're souping them up, claiming it's an eradication program. And after they do that, suddenly it explodes and gets worse. So the headline is, after Bill and Melinda Gates tinker with Zika, it gets worse.
Well, what they're failing to mention is the fact that Brazil has the highest level of tetracycline, which is an antibiotic, of any other country. And more tetracycline is used for animals and humans than anywhere else in the world. And there's high levels of tetracycline in all the water supply.
That's right. We think America is cheating with chemicals and with drugs for the animals. You think we have beef, folks? We have nothing compared to Brazil or Chile or all those countries. We don't produce the beef here. And absolutely, they are just feeding them whatever they want down there.
Well, what happens is these genetically modified mosquitoes, if there's in the presence of tiny, tiny amounts of tetracycline, it does not kill the larva like it's supposed to of the female.
It makes them drug resistant, including the Zika.
Yeah, so they've even admitted up to 15% of the mosquitoes are now new strains of mosquitoes that are being developed with the Zika. So it doesn't even, with the tetracycline in the water.
And by the way, imagine all the thousands of cross-species chimeras, the pharmacological crops. Now, zoologically, you don't get diseases your dog does, but now, forget dog, we can get insect diseases. I mean, we are just breaking all the bonds and allowing everything to jump cross-species. Totally insane. Here's an example. If just putting ducks next to pigs in China and their feces runs together in slurries gives us almost all the superflu, just running those two viral groups together, imagine what splicing them does.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time till some superbug gets released. I mean, I'm sorry.
It is. That's why it's so important to know about how to keep your immune system strong, to where you can look at all of this stuff and all this fear-mongering and everything else out there, and not necessarily fear-mongering. I mean, I can't help it if I go out in my yard, living in Houston, where we have mosquitoes all over the place. And as a matter of fact, just today, they confirmed somebody in Texas got the Zika virus from sexually transmitted, and now they're saying through saliva as well. But
and by the way, that's what Dr. Boyle was saying 2 weeks ago.
Yes. Yeah, I watched that interview. That was great.
Well, he said that last Friday, but we were reading his papers a week and a half before that. So he had his sources saying this before it came out. And he's saying it is a bioweapon. It's been souped up. And now we have it directly linked to it. In fact, we should get him back on now with all this new info.
So the solution to that for everybody listening is just keep your immune system strong. You know, get lots of sleep. Don't stress out. Take vitamin C. Take some zinc, by the way, which is an anthroplex. You know, keep your body cleansed. Keep your self-healing mechanism strong. There's a lot of different herbs out there, oregano oil, iodine, there's silver.
They also admit that one flu shot cuts your immune system by 50% for at least a year. I mean, no wonder we're so sick. The vaccines people are taking lowers their immunity, and then they're incubators for all these bugs.
That's right. And I tell you another thing, I haven't looked into this, but it wouldn't surprise me if whatever company owns Off and all the toxic mosquito repellents, which just add to the problem even more, because now you have people spraying that stuff all over their body, all over their kids. And those are some of the most toxic pesticides and phthalates and fragrances and chemicals that are just going to alter your hormone levels and shut down or alter your endocrine system anyway. So if the mosquitoes and the Zika virus isn't bad, look at all the things that's going to come from the pollution in the water supplies from all the pesticides, and then all the people that are in fear and are spraying. I mean, I know actually people in Houston right now that are spraying their kids down before they go to school in the morning with Off.
Even though normal Zika is just a mild fever, are they worried their kids are about to get pregnant? I mean, don't you have to get bitten by and be actively dealing with Zika when a baby is gestating to actually have the problem?
I don't think we've really come to analyzing the different types of symptoms and problems we might be dealing with yet.
All right, stay there. Let's talk some about that on the other side. And we do have the Bill Gates zero population clip ready. When we come back, I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Stay with us. The globalist social engineers are not just targeting us with propaganda. They are manipulating our genetics. We are being targeted at every level by estrogen mimickers that lower our testosterone and other hormones and natural compounds that the body needs, sourced from powerful organic herbs, and then concentrated for maximum potency. Super Male Vitality was developed to activate your body's own natural processes. Visit InfoWarsLife.com today to secure your Super Male Vitality.